This is Al Jazeera.
And live from Studio 14 here at Al Jazeera headquarters in Doha, I'm Kamal Santamaria. Welcome to the News Grid. An attack on a military parade in Iran leaves 29 people dead. ISIL's claimed responsibility, but the Iranians have a different take, talking about regional terror sponsors and their US masters. We'll have the latest on the attack and how Iran might respond. A parade to remember the beginning of the Iran-Iraq war has ended with at least 29 people dead. Gunmen opened fire on a military commemoration in the southern Iranian city of Ahvaz. While ISIL was quick to claim responsibility, an Iranian military spokesman has blamed two groups linked to, quote, two Gulf countries with ties to the US and Israel. Here it is on the map for you just briefly. Ahvaz, it is about 150 kilometres from the Iraqi border, an area that's seen Arab separatists attack oil pipelines in the past. Also one of several cities where there have been large anti-government protests in recent months. Let's start with this report from Dosa Jabari.
Chaos and panic in the city of Ahvaz in southern Iran as an unprecedented scene unfolds during a military parade. Unidentified gunmen opened fire during the parade at the start of Sacred Defense Week. It commemorates Iranians who died during the 8-year war with Iraq in the 1980s. Most of the victims were members of the Revolutionary Guards. Women and children were also killed in the attack. This man is asking why his 4-year-old daughter had to die. A Revolutionary Guard spokesman says 4 men dressed in khaki uniforms and riding motorbikes are connected to the Al-Ahvaziyya group, which is supported by Saudi Arabia. All 4 suspects have been killed.
When they come to launch an attack like this at the IRGC in southwestern Iran, in an Arab-populated region, then that means that there has been a well-intimidated plan in order to send a very strong message, actually. So there are speculations to believe now, and there are reasons to believe now, that this has been an attack masterminded by the United States and the Saudis, especially because the Takfiri Salafi terrorists of Al-Ahwaziyya, supported by the Saudis, have been recognized to have been in charge of this attack.
The rare attack took place in Khuzestan province, which borders Iraq and has the largest ethnic Arab community in Iran. The province was a major battleground during the Iran-Iraq war. The Ahvaz attack happened as President Hassan Rouhani was delivering a speech at the main anniversary parade in Tehran. He immediately vowed a crushing response and ordered security forces to find who's behind the attack. And in Ahvaz, the investigation continues into the major breach of security. Dorsa Jabari, Al Jazeera.
The first official reaction we had was a tweet from the Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif. He said this: terrorists recruited, trained, armed and paid by a foreign regime have attacked Ahvaz. He said he then went on to say Iran holds regional terror sponsors and their US masters accountable for such attacks. What does that mean? Well, let's ask Mahjoub Zoueri, who's with us in studio, a regular contributor. He's the Associate Professor in Contemporary History of the Middle East at Qatar University. Actually, we'll come back to that tweet in a moment. The first thing I think is, okay, we ask the questions of who, what, where, why, and how. The important ones, I feel, are who and why at this point. What are your thoughts?
I think it's hard to say, Kamal, who's behind it now. We have the Ahvaz National Resistance also movement. They announced their responsibility. Amaq, the media wing of Al-Qaeda, also has announced its responsibility of the attack. But it's hard to say who's now after a few hours. There is no doubt that Iran was targeted, according to their own resources, from Al-Qaeda. And just in June, they were able to stop a group of Al-Qaeda to do some activity in Tehran. They have also were able also to face some of the groups in Balochistan, in the border with Pakistan. So within the security, I would say, circle in Iran, there was sort of, they were alerted about activities of Al-Qaeda. And I think this is, what is interesting about this event is actually targeting Revolutionary Guard in the day where they show their muscles before the people, and Al-Ahvaz, the story which basically people, they are criticizing the regime in the last few months, and there was a lot of reports about criticism to the regime for being ignoring their own demands.
So then we had Zarif, as I said in that tweet, holding regional terrorist sponsors and the US masters accountable. Rouhani says 2 Gulf countries with ties to the US and Israel. Saudi Arabia and the UAE? Is that, do we deduce that? At least that's what the
If we
Iranians
put
are saying?
things in a context, Kamal, we have to remember that Prince Mohammed bin Salman did say that the battle will be moved to inside Iran, and he in an interview, well-known interview, that no longer will be reacting to Iran outside its border. We will go inside Iran. That's one thing. I think we will expect more capitalization on that statement from Iranian media.
Can I just jump in, because I've just seen on the wires here, Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei says this attack on is linked to US allies in the region.
Absolutely.
So they're all pushing this one line, and it makes me think about retaliation, because Zarif said that as well. We will respond swiftly. What do you think a retaliation could look like? Because you've got this other theater of war, don't you? You've got Yemen, which we know the Iranis and the Saudis and everyone are all involved.
I think there is 2 ways of retaliation. One, I call it way of capitalization on the event. Iran, this event comes after 2 days of announcing the Department of State's report on terrorism, where they attack Iran. So Iran will capitalize on this by saying to the world, look, you accuse us of being terrorism. Look, we are targeted on terrorism. So there will be capitalization as part of retaliation on the event by saying we are a victim as others are victims. So basically they will be capitalizing on this. I think the other way of retaliation, it will be actually criticizing the countries working with the United States, in particular Saudi Arabia, because there is always in the last few months, there was always accusation of takfiris, of being responsible of terrorism and instability in the region. And Iran always justify its presence in Syria and Iraq and Yemen, fighting Al-Qaeda and takfiris. So there will be also sort of retaliation in those places. I would expect in Syria, I would expect in Iraq, sort of attacks to those groups that Iran is involved in a way or other in those fights.
What sort of support could Iran expect? Because supporting Iran for a lot of countries is a difficult thing,
Absolutely.
even in a case like this where it's clearly been attacked.
So far, there was a lot of statement I saw from London, condemnation of what's happened. I expect sort of this statement will appear from until tomorrow from different places. I don't expect more, especially we are moving toward another wave of sanctions on Iran in November by the United States. I think I expect next week on in New York more, I would say, war of words between Iran and the United States, Iran and Israel about terrorism, anti-terrorism, all of these issues. And I think the story of today will appear as an important story to comment on.
All right, Mahjoub Zouheiri, thank you for coming.
My pleasure,
Much
Kamal. Thank you
appreciated.
so much.
Thank you. Okay. Now, you can expect Iran to be in the headlines a lot more this week. It is the annual UN General Assembly gathering in New York. That means, of course, lots of speeches from lots of world leaders, but also, Leah's looking at this for us, some potential fireworks at the Security Council.
Right. Well, Donald Trump will be obviously attending the General Assembly, but he's also going to be chairing a meeting at the Security Council. And this has been quite a ride for White House planners and UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. On September 4th, Haley told journalists that Trump's plans to chair one of the meetings so he could, quote, address Iran's violations of international law and the general instability Iran sows throughout the entire Middle East region. Now, tweeting in response a day later, Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif criticized the move, saying that Trump plans to abuse the presidency of Security Council to divert the session and blame Iran for horrors the U.S. and its clients have unleashed across the Middle East. And it seems Zarif was not the only one disappointed. The Washington Post reported, also quoting sources from inside the UN, that some U.S. officials and allies believed the topic would expose disagreements between the U.S., France, and Britain over the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, which Trump withdrew from last May. And so days later, the U.S. mission to the UN changed the topic on the agenda to, quote, counter proliferation. And Ambassador Haley said they'd broadened the topic because the president did not want to be limited. Then the next day, Trump tweeted this, saying, I will chair the United Nations Security Council meeting on Iran next week. There you have it. Well, if you're planning on following,
please share and like.